I'm thoroughly enjoying myself in Bayreuth. All I want to do now is immerse myself in the music I adore and count down the days to the opening of the festival. But there's another character who can't be kept out of the story any longer. Even though for someone like me with Jewish blood in their veins, it would be simpler and so much happier if he'd never been a part of it all. Hitler fell in love with Wagner's music when he was a young man with dreams of becoming an artist himself. By the time he first visited Bayreuth in 1923, he had traded painting for politics. He came to meet this man, British-born writer Houston Stewart Chamberlain, who was married to one of Wagner's daughters. Chamberlain was a racist who championed Aryan supremacy and vilified the Jews. He saw in Hitler a man of destiny who would finish the job Wagner had begun by forging a new and culturally pure Germany. Long before he became Chancellor, Hitler was embraced by some in Bayreuth with open arms. It wasn't a question of welcoming Hitler because, in a sort of cowardly custard fashion, he was the great leader of Germany and they didn't dare offend him. Quite the opposite. They actually pushed him forward. They supported him from a very early age. 1923 was just a few years after the First World War when Hitler was a nobody. He was a corporal who'd left the front and come to join the turmoil of post-war Germany. That was just the beginning of a relationship between Hitler, some members of the Wagner family, and Bayreuth, which would cause lasting damage to the reputation of the festival house and to Wagner's music. I'd like to think it is possible to salvage it from all those dark associations, to rescue it from Hitler's grasp. But I also have to consider a more disturbing possibility. Are the qualities which first drew me to Wagner's music, its emotional force and directness, the same ones that made the music so apt for Nazi exploitation? To test that theory, I'm heading to Nuremberg, 50 miles south of Bayreuth. In the Middle Ages, this was the capital of the German cultural renaissance, the inspiration for Wagner's opera, The Mastersingers. Later, of course, it became the home of Hitler's infamous propaganda rallies. Well, the thing is, Joachim, I'm familiar with the idea that whenever there's a, footage of the Nuremberg rallies with Hitler standing on that podium over there, usually someone has decided to play Wagner in the background. But you have theories that actually Wagner is more deeply embedded in the modern Nazi Nuremberg.
Yes, I think so. First of all, when you take all these party rallies that we had here, in the evening then there was a Festaufführung, a celebration of the Meistersingers of Nuremberg.
Right, one of Wagner's truly great operas.
Yes.
And they played that and then came here, didn't they, to this enormous, what was then, there were how many soldiers would be here?
I'm sure more than 100,000.
More than 100,000.
Yeah, from all over Germany, they gathered here.
And the party faithful would have listened to the Meistersingers first.
In the evening they listened to the Meistersingers, and the next day...
here.
Yes, and they played it themselves. Hitler loved the Meistersinger. He loved to whistle the tunes to his guest. He could whistle all the tunes in the Meistersinger.
Oh, God.
Yes, he liked that. There's a certain scene that triggered in him, I think, that whole rally idea.
Yeah.
It was the third act. There you have all the guilds of Nuremberg marching onto the stage, and you have like costumed masses carrying flags and their guild signs and symbols, and they're singing together. It's a wonderful scene, but it's definitely a political manifestation. And this is on the small stage of the opera, and then transferred or even translated into reality in this huge field here in Nuremberg.
So they perverted the style of Wagner, if you like, the emotional impact of the music and the grandeur and the spectacle, which does have an enormous effect on audiences who love Wagner. You do get turned into a jelly by the end of the evening.
Yes.
It's so extreme.
Yes. That was the first step. The second was that he thought one could teach the Germans to see the world in a way which you find in Wagner operas, in a dialectical way, that you have a protagonist and an antagonist, that you have a good and an evil, that you have like a Iago and a Desdemona, or in the Wagner case, it is Siegfried and the dragon. Now, if you have this in the opera, it is perfectly all right, because the opera needs the tension of drama between the good and the evil. But as soon as you turn it into reality, it becomes a devastating political fantasy and ideology.
Of course, a defender of Wagner like me, although I'm not a complete defender of Wagner, would say Hitler saw one side of Wagner, and we tend to see Hitler's side of Wagner. Because Hitler was such a huge figure in the 20th century, and because his taste for Wagner was so enormous, we tend to say, what did Hitler see in Wagner? And we look through Hitler's viewfinder at this enormous man and see one little area like that, instead of seeing the whole thing. If Joachim's right, that makes Nuremberg the sinister descendant of Ludwig's castle Neuschwanstein, a monstrous example of the way Wagner's music inspires some men to tear down the boundary which ought to separate fantasy from fact. The railing